Thanks for that, Vicky, and also thank you to Paul for his talk just then, because it does very nicely lead us into this particular topic. For those of you who were here about 12 months ago, I delivered a session on the legislation that was currently in bill form. It's now been enacted, and that introduced a statutory integrated care systems, which is made up of those integrated care boards that we heard about earlier. And so really, we're now 12 months on. Those bodies have been in place for 6 months. And one of the things we wanted to talk about in this panel, and so we've got those esteemed colleagues here to do that, is to see really where we are now, so 6 months in from that formation, and what opportunities there are in terms of integration, and they're called integration care systems. So I'll quickly introduce, well, Vicky's already introduced, but we've got David here, who's a colleague. We've got Paul, who's going to continue the conversation about interoperability, no doubt. Taz, who joined us last year, and also I know we'll have lots of interesting things to say, and Patrick as well. I didn't realise you just phoned in, Patrick, so thank you very, very much for joining us. So I just wanted to open up really and ask the panel, what are the challenges that are faced by integrated care systems, and in particular, as we know that the integrated care boards are sort of the commissioning side of that. We're new, we know there's and we know that there's a need for them to have some time to mature, but what are their key challenges in relation to this, and particularly answering the question around integrating health tech into this new world. Taz, it's okay if I start with you?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if this is working or not, but yeah, I guess I've been a GP for almost 15 years, and founded Abode roughly about the same time as you, or about 8 years ago. And there's definitely sort of, we recognise ICS is a new, formed just in July. So there are a whole bunch of new people in leadership positions. I guess the challenge is the real work that's happening on the ground. So providers are, as you can see all over the headlines, really swamped with, winter pressures all year round, sort of pressure. So I think the challenge as an innovator is, despite having evidence, impact, health economic, analysis and support, it's who to target, who to actually work with, to ultimately move from sort of a pilot into scaling up. So I think the challenge is trying to identify people within organizations and within the forming ICS while they're still forming. It's just really, really difficult. And some ICSs are really mature. In some areas, they did work in terms of integrating. This has been on the agenda for such a long time. They've already done the work before the legislation came in. So I think, you've got to recognize that in some areas they're really advanced, in other areas are not. In digital, which is a space that I'm in, the challenge with an ICS is that someone may be tasked with digital, but it might be siloed from transformation, which is so important in digital. In fact, most health tech, the tech is a very small part of it. So knowing who the people in transformation are, there will be a director of transformation in an ICS, but trying to join up the DOFs, directors of finance, with transformation, with digital in the space that you're in is really hard, and they're not necessarily all talking to each other.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly heard from Paul, there's clearly an appetite in the public sector space for digital innovation, and there's clearly you guys working on the ground in order to provide that, but getting the sort of the two sides to the right people to talk to each other is not always tricky. David, have you got any thoughts on?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a digital and data lawyer, and so I'm looking at health tech space from the perspective of technology projects and putting together the contracts that underpin them and make them happen. And I'm really struck by the numbers. As a rank outsider, I'm from Birmingham. I'm the one that was a toddler in Wigan, by the way. So I have a very weak link to Manchester, and I'm learning about its health system all the time, as this morning. Just looking at the numbers, 550 health providers in the Greater Manchester region. Each trust within that cluster of 550 providers with 200 plus clinical systems, not including their other IT applications, is a complicated organizations that need to, and numerous organizations with a huge number of IT applications that need to work together. Some of them in an advanced state of governance, relatively speaking, but all of them with IT that was bought in yesteryear. The IT legacy needs to be moved a contract at a time, an application at a time, and it will be the work I expect of decades for interoperability truly to move forwards. What we can achieve in the meantime is, I think, relatively tactical, and organizations like 6B able to move in and conduct an analysis of what's there on the ground at the moment before the latest new system or improved on interoperability can be procured. An absolutely key catalyst to moving the system forward. I see it's an immense challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you bring those numbers out, you realise how complicated it is, and I certainly speak to sort of family members and friends, as I have been doing a lot more in the last year. I've had more time to do so, and they can't believe, why can't it just, why doesn't it just, they're baffled. And then when you start to peel away the layers, you realise just how complex it is. And you're right, absolutely, organisations like Abode and 6B are well placed actually in order to be more agile and to get in and solve those problems where they exist. Patrick, and I know that you've got lots of thoughts on this, so please, it'd be great if you could share yours.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that I do, I basically act as a business partner for multiple international companies who have really great tech solutions for the medtech space, who are trying to add value to the UK healthcare system. And I think there are two things. One is the fact that the solution can be great, but if you don't have the basics in place, it's going to be really difficult. So that's something that most of these companies are really struggling with. So it's the fact that something like a basic electronic healthcare record is something that you need. The NHS is still very much paper-based, so you can have the greatest app and solution, but if you're still working on paper, that doesn't really do a lot. And then the second challenge that they are facing with is there's not a real level. We need to have a level playing field. So you have these, so you have these innovators that have this great idea, but where do you go? So there are a number of organizations within definitely within the Greater Manchester healthcare sector that are able to help, but they're not always known. And those organizations don't always know where the actual innovation is. So I think there's many challenges there in creating that level playing field.
Absolutely. And Paul, I just wondered if there's anything you wanted to contribute. I know we've heard from you, but
yeah,
sure you've got extra thoughts.
No, yeah, and actually, obviously, lean straight into tech and interoperability as my thoughts. But I think, to the points that have already been mentioned, it is about getting that foundation right. And the challenge for an ICS, I think, is, as we've seen, as I was speaking about earlier, interoperability is nothing new. We've been trying to do it for 20 years in the NHS. We've an integrated care system now. We're looking at interoperability, yes, within the 500 plus healthcare systems. Then we're also adding local authorities, social care to that. So the interoperability challenge has just grown quite a lot. But some ICSs are really mature, moving fast. Greater Manchester is definitely one of them. 6B works with Greater Manchester Combined Authority around this problem. And what they are doing really good is building kind of quick, agile data platforms to amalgamate this data. We're not tearing everything out and rebuilding it from scratch. We're building on top of pre-existing stuff to get agile, quick outcomes. But I think that's the challenge. I think there's a lot of systems to kind of tie up, and you need that as a platform.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it would be interesting to share with the audience what all of your thoughts are on sort of seeking out those opportunities there. Maybe some tips. I know there's been a few articles recently, I think most recently in the HSJ, and someone mentioned in there that, first and foremost, talk about foundations. Clinical buy-in is a really good example of if you've got clinical buy-in from your potential, if you're an innovator, from your sort of potential customer, then that's what that will help you to sort of prove your case and hopefully get on board. you got any other thoughts around sort of tips for how to succeed in the marketplace? Taz, you're nodding, so I'm guessing so.
It's always interesting, also as a clinician, you might be able to kind of show the benefits and they get very excited and they can see the benefits to them. It might be their way of working. They see the onward benefits to patients, but you've got to be really careful because are they the decision maker? Who's a fund holder? Who's making, there are many layers of this and it's really complicating the NHS, and a job title doesn't necessarily give it away. So it's important to recognize, you've got to make the financial case, the clinical case, basically the benefits. But then you might not be talking to the decision maker. And even when you get through to a decision maker, you don't know who's influencing them. So we're talking from exec, operations, clinical, and people at the heart of it. So you've got to show all these benefits, but the hardest thing is getting into that first organization. And that's really difficult. So you mentioned about being agile. We pivoted and responded in COVID, and that gave us an opportunity with the biggest trust in the country. And they took a gamble and we took a gamble. So I think there's something about sort of shared risk taking as well. Yeah. And unfortunately, if you're too small to take those risks, it's really difficult. So I think the challenge is getting into somewhere that's really receptive, and then doing what, being open and honest about what you can actually do. If you overpromise and underdeliver, your reputation's gone. So if you can deliver on a key area and then evidence everything, and the first speaker, Paul, was talking about, I think, Health Innovation Manchester. We work really closely with the academic health science networks, and they will bring, if it's a great idea, they've got lots of accelerators and programs, and we started off right at the start of one of those 8 years ago, and they brought together academics and industry and introduced us to the right people. So I kind of insist on, a health economic report, which the HSNs support with, real world data impact as well. But that isn't necessarily a sort of guarantee to anything. So that's sort of good to talk about the foundations, if they're working with paper, and you've got a system that can absolutely revolutionize, we've proven we can double the productivity of the workforce in a trust. And we've proven that now. They were, I think you were mentioning earlier, Paul, that there's like layers of different systems from Excel to whiteboards to paper, because they're working with legacy systems that don't do a lot of things, but they hold a lot of power and they're quite wedded to it. I think the biggest challenge is sort of change aversion. The NHS isn't just risk averse, they're change averse. So, are they willing to change from what they're currently doing? No matter how good your tech is, that you got to find those people. And we found the route to the ICS is deliver at a local level. So within a provider, from our point of view, and then we were given the opportunity to connect in with an ICS. This was actually in London where we've had the most success. And then the ICS recognized what we did and then gave us and commissioned some work. And that's actually now going into a national level. So it's, unfortunately, you got to kiss a lot of frogs to find that prince or princess to get that opportunity.
Which takes up a lot of time.
It's a lot of time, a lot of, constantly trying to demonstrate what you can do without trying to oversell yourself as well.
And what about, I mean, this question is for David and Patrick really, but if Taz or Paul have got any thoughts as well, do chip in. But as sort of advisors or organisations on that periphery, what do you think you can offer to those innovators and also to the innovators' potential customers to support that process and to make that more streamlined and ultimately save some time as well? Patrick, if you've got any thoughts on how you can improve that?
Yeah, I mean there are some really good organizations out there. So obviously there you can go for the HSN network, which is something I can really highly recommend. But there are also a number of commercial partners that who know the way for the system. Which definitely, if you're really at the startup or even at the scale phase, having an organization that knows the way around the system and who know all the players and who know where to go, that can really save you a lot of time and money. Because it is a very timely process. There's a lot of time involved, and I think that's where I don't think these partners are always known. And so, so I think definitely, even though that will cost a bit of money, but I think that will really help you.
Good investment.
To accelerate.
Yeah, David.
I think crucially advisors that understand the space and are sensitive to it and willing to move as well. I think Taz was absolutely spot on. There's a massive cultural change required here. It's not for advisors to stand on the periphery and expect their clients, NHS organisations, just to make all the change. We have to support that change by pivoting as well. And I think a key way that legal advisors can do that, for example, is by helping commissioning organisations, contracting authorities, maybe to place less emphasis on the formal procurement process and the weighty, heavy contracts, and more emphasis on getting out there and talking to providers, tech suppliers, evaluating their systems and what can be achieved with them. There is legal work, significant legal work involved just in making that happen because of the difficulties of achieving interoperability and pulling the data out from where it is. And establishing partnering level relationships with these suppliers so that they can be exploratory, and it's about the conversation and discussion as much as, and being in touch as much as it is about delivering a specific feature project or implementation. I think a great deal more agility is going to be the name of the label of the whole session, isn't it? Much more agility is needed.
Paul, have you had good experience of sort of third parties or external support that's really helped you along the way?
Yeah, definitely. So 100% HSN network and in Yorkshire, not quite Manchester, but it is fantastic in Yorkshire. So hopefully it's just as good in Manchester. And you know, they are incredible. So if you're an innovator and you're trying to engage with the NHS, you're missing a trick if you're not involved in HSN. Definitely worth getting involved. But I think to Taz's point, I think NHS is complex, procurement is complex into the NHS. It's a bit of a nightmare, but I think the fundamentals of a good business doesn't change, and having a really good service and a really good product and building relationships, it is hard work, but you can't circumnavigate that as much as you can employ a fantastic bid writer and put together the most fantastic thing. Your product and service has got to be good, and you've got to have some real world evidence to back it up, else you're just not going to get through that front door.
Yeah,
so just to add to the support of the other organisations, we actually found, we were doing some work with virtual wards in London, and there was a person that was from a trust. And this was, I think there was 5 virtual wards, 7 trusts involved, and the person leading it, immediately I knew they were working under a trust title, but I knew straight away this wasn't an NHS person. And after the meeting, it was a virtual meeting, we just asked him to hang around, what's your background? And basically he was a management consultant, and he was absolutely brilliant. And that trust had the foresight of bringing this consultant in and just leading on this, because what tends to happen in the NHS is it just gets added onto someone's already busy schedule and day job. And transformation and project management and PMO functions, it's really hard, doesn't really happen that well. So it's not actually, there's loads of organized, I know obviously David supported me as well in the contracting side of it, but and to the procurement, we had an opportunity to sit with Jackie Rock, the new Chief Commercial Officer for NHS England, and she's absolutely hammering through that it's less procurement, it's more partnerships.
Yeah.
And if you can get into, the NHS are quite afraid of partnering with industry or how it's seen and the optics and things like that. So I think, you need to kind of move towards the ones that have, less afraid of that, and allow contracting to make it easier for them, because the procurement and innovation always go head to head. And actually, they don't always have a specification. When you're disrupting, like I'm sure a lot of people in this room are, there isn't a specification for this new model that hasn't been created yet. So they need to work and be development partners and all that sort of stuff. And that, you can't procure that.
You need to make it as easy as possible for your potential buyer. And that kind of, there's good examples. I think also, this is obviously the 3rd session now, and we've heard it in all 3 sessions, the importance of that collaboration and those partnerships. So that message is coming through sort of loud and clear. I just wondered if anyone's got any questions. There's a bit of opportunity here for some interaction. If anyone wants to ask any of the panelists any questions. Oh, my word! Well, that woke you all up. Woke me up.
Hi. Hi, I'm Shaz from the Healthcare News Channel. I was just saying, if you guys need help, obviously getting your word out there, we've launched an AI system that's launched about 2-3 days ago. We're more than happy to share your content of the social media channels if you need help promoting that. There's no cost involved at all.
That's
So, yeah.
fantastic. I think that makes a really important point about those sort of collaborating and partnership. This is an ecosystem, as Paul highlighted at the beginning, and actually the more organisations can do to support each other, the better, because ultimately what's everybody doing this for? I mean, Paul, you started out, you know, your journey began because of your mum. Most of the health tech success that I've come across, there's always a story at the heart of it, and it usually involves somebody who was very poorly or has had a particularly difficult journey. So actually what drives most people, I mean, patients know best, we've heard as an example, that was driven off the back of a similar situation. You know, we're doing this for the right reasons, so why make it super competitive? Why not work together? So thank you, that's a fantastic offer, and I'm sure will be taken up. Is there anything else that anyone wants to? And I won't steal the answer to this one, I'll let you go.
So you all mentioned the academic health science networks, which is fantastic, but then you also say there are others out there that can help, but none of you said who they are. So I was just wondering if you could, you know, maybe name some companies or others that you would recommend.
Yeah, right. So for instance, one of the companies that I'm working with at the moment, it's a company called Kwik Health. They're actually based in Manchester, you know, and you know, and I've had really great experiences with them. You know, is that they that they can actually scale to you know, to find the right contacts to you know, to really get out there and kind of you know, approach a whole range of trust and you know, other elements you know, within the ecosystem, and that's something that a startup or a scale up really struggles with, because you know, because you might be on your own, you might have 2-3 people max, you know, so to really get out there and really start to find those partnerships, you know, Taz made a really good point of find the right people within you know, within a trust. Just having that volume option of really getting out there, I found that really helpful.
I'm going to make a shameful plug as well for my company, which is Mills and Reeve. We offer a sort of it's called Launchpad Pro. It's our program that supports early stage businesses, early stage tech businesses. I'm sure David could talk about it a bit more than me. I've been out of the game for 12 months, but that's a service that we offer. Lots of content available to support businesses, and then sort of discounted complimentary rates as well. So there are organisations that are willing to sort of support as well, whether that's free, discounted, or advice and support that's more suitable for an early stage business.
Just to back up these guys, I mean, Vicky, Charlotte, and David have supported me through my journey, and you know, massive thank you to them. The HSNs actually are the ones who introduce the partners, and every HSN, there are some, just to be kind of blunt about it, there are some really good HSNs and there's not so good HSNs, depending on where you are and the leadership there. The Yorkshire one, brilliant, Health Innovation Manchester and others. But I think the challenge is that depending on your sector, so that there can be individuals even and management consultants who happen to be experts in a field. So rather than giving a sort of blanket approach, I think there's, you know, you need solid legal, commercial advice, you know, corporate finance, depending on what stage you're at. But I think you kind of got to go to that sector, but the HSNs will recommend, and the part of my startup, what do they call it? It was like an accelerator. They brought in 3 companies. They were Yorkshire-based companies, Medipex, Medilink, and there was one other I can't remember. But that was very early stage. But they also introduced academics as well. So and it's still going today. So this was like 8 years ago, University of Bradford, and we've just got the accelerated knowledge transfer. So we've just literally last week brought someone in and doing some KTP, so knowledge transfer partnerships as well. And it's just knowing who the right, and that happens to be in AI and machine learning, so go to the HSNs, they might have people, and go to, people, I'm sure there's tons of people in this room.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly
who
that.
kind of
Use this
will give you the
opportunity.
experience, and tell you who not to go to as well.
Sorry,
I just add to that. I think in terms of specific people or groups, I think there's really good individual consultants for engagement with the NHS as well. And again, shameless plug to someone that we work with fairly frequently is Martin Bell from the Martin Bell Partnership.
Yeah.
An ex-NHS or EMIS director, I believe. But both. Right. Okay. So everyone seems to know Martin. He's really, and for that reason, he's super well connected. So there's 2 or 3 other people like that. So if anyone wants to grab me afterwards, I'm happy to kind of put people in touch with the right people. But Martin's fantastic. He can open doors and help navigate through engagement with the NHS.
Other organisations, just thinking as well, it was appeared on, I think, your slides, Paul, Tech UK. They've got a health and social care council, of which I sit on, and they've got the interoperability working group. So if there's anyone who would like more information about these sorts of organisations, then do just come and grab one of us in the lunch, and we'll be able to provide some more information. I've personally found that once you sort of step over the threshold and start getting into, speak to people like Martin or any of us, you realize, oh, that person knows that person knows that person. So hopefully that will open up some doors. We're happy to. Is there anything you want to mention there, David, before we close? I'm guessing.
Yeah. Just to say that it somewhat depends what you're trying to achieve. So if you're interested in sales and achieving introductions, then I guess there have been lots of good answers that basically boil down to join hands with somebody who is already connected, and they'll be able to make introductions for you. And the HSNs are an excellent start, particularly the effective ones. Funding, on the other hand, it would be an entirely different network, and I would start with British Business Bank, Innovate UK, and others, and there are other experts within my firm, for example, such as Vicky, who are connected at different layers in that, because the funding stream has layers as well, depending on which stage you've reached as an organisation. So yeah, be clear about what you're trying to achieve, as well as wanting to find somebody to join hands with.
Fantastic. So thank you, everyone. I think that draws this panel session to a close. I know most of us are around through the lunch, so I say do stop us and have a chat if there's anything else you'd like to know more about. Thank you.